Welcome to the next lecture and the next automation we're going to create. This one is a little bit more complex than any of the ones we've done before. And so this is sort of the transition from the end of this section, and then the next section we're going to get into things that are sort of like this one we're going to go through. So bring in all of your strength and all the stuff you've learned, and we are going to create this awesome automation in Zapier. It's a Zap that's going to take information that we send via Slack about the gas prices that we are seeing when we fill up a tank, and then it's going to let us know if we are below or above our average. So it's telling us, hey, you're doing a great job, you're finding the right gas stations to go to and you're saving money. Or, hey, gas prices are kind of high and you're actually above average on the year. So that's the type of information we're going to get, and a lot is going to happen in between. We're going to use things like Zapier formatting and pathways. So these are premium features in Zapier. If you do not have a premium account, then you can just watch and follow along. Or if you have a new account in Zapier, it does give you that free trial of the premium features, and you're going to be able to do this yourself. So let's jump in and go through all the steps here. All right, so the trigger that we are going to want to set up for this Zap is a Slack trigger. We're going to Slack a couple of pieces of information, the amount of gallons we're putting into the tank and the total amount, and then a whole bunch of other stuff's going to happen. So the very first thing we're going to do is click Make a Zap, like always. And once we get in here, we're going to connect Slack. All right, and the one we want is actually a less common option. This isn't some message we're going to broadcast to a bunch of people. You're going to want it to be private to just you. And so the very last option is new message posted to private channel. So we're going to select this, but before we move forward, we're going to go into Slack and create that private channel, sort of set it up so that it's ready to go. So let's jump into Slack. And if you have the permissions set for your workspace, and they should be set for you guys in the Build Anything workspace, so you should be able to do this. If you click the plus icon next to channels, plus icon, you can create a new channel. I'm going to call this new channel gas prices, and we're going to make it private. Purpose, record my price per gallon to work with my Zap. We'll create that channel. Cool. When we fill up with gas, there are two numbers that we're going to want to record, and you'll just open up your Slack app on your phone and punch these into this private channel. The first thing we want to punch in is the total amount. So let's punch in an example. Let's say it costs $24 and I got 13 gallons. Great. And let's do a couple others. Say it was $32.75, and on that day filled up 14 gallons. And then one more, say it was really expensive, $45, and I still was just filling up 14 gallons. Cool. So we've got some examples there, and that's how it's going to work every time you fill up with gas. So let's go back and finish the Zap in Zapier. The Build Anything workspace is connected. Great. The channel, we're going to choose gas prices because that's the one we just set up. This next setting you don't have to worry about right now. It's optional. It has to do with bots, and a lot of bots are used in Slack. We're just going to select no because we're going to enter this in manually. We'll pull in some samples. Okay, great. And let's take that first sample. All right. So now we have those two data points. The next thing we want to do with those data points is use the formatter in Zapier to create a calculation. Now I realize for this example, we could always look at the gas tank and the, what are those called? Just the place where you're able to see how many gallons you filled up with and how much it costs. It's going to tell you how much per gallon at the gas station. But just for the sake of this example, we're going to use a formatter to show you how it works to do that calculation. So in Zapier, what we do is click Add a Step, and we go down to Formatter. Formatter is going to take the data inputs from the trigger and then do something with them. There's a lot of things you can do. So when we click Formatter, you can work with numbers, and that's where we're going to be. But you can also work with things like date and time and format a number that comes in and maybe subtract a week or add a week. It could be helpful with automations you want to do for project management. But for this, we're going to choose numbers, and we're going to simply just divide the numbers to get the price per gallon. We enter in how we're going to transform, and we're going to do a math operation, which is just divide. Very simple. We choose divide. Awesome. And then you put in the numbers you're going to divide. And you can see here the text from that message, 45 and 14. We're just going to select that, and it will divide those numbers. When we click continue, shows you what we're going to divide, and actually Zapier takes the numbers and splits them out, which is great. So that's already formatted correctly. We're going to send the test and see what happens. All right. So it was successful, and the output we see there was 3.214 and a bunch of other numbers. That is our price per gallon. Perfect. So we have that number. That's exactly what we need. The next step we need to do is actually create a Google Sheet, because that's where we're going to record all the data that we get. Now, I went ahead and completed all the next actions and steps just to make it easy for us as we go through. So we'll just jump into the Google Sheet that I created so you can see what I did. Just went into Google Drive, created a new spreadsheet, named it gas prices, and then on the first worksheet I have 3 columns. One is a recorded column, and this is just an indication that we're going to use in a later step to say, hey, this data came through, it looks good, and we're going to be able to search against this column, and you'll see why later on. But go ahead and create the recorded column, the date that we're going to pull over from the Slack message, and then that calculated formatter step that we had in Zapier to get the price per gallon. So we're going to input that all into this spreadsheet, and then the only other thing we need is to create a new sheet called average price per gallon. And this is simply a calculation that's going to show us the average of all the data listed in that first sheet, so we can see average price per gallon. So right now there's no number, so it's going to give us an error, but that will populate as we punch in more inputs and get numbers to populate that first sheet. So go ahead and create this. Pause the video if you need to. As soon as you do that, we're going to go back into Zapier, and the next step we do is create a spreadsheet row. So I'll show you what that looks like. Of course, we're going to select Google Sheets, create spreadsheet row. The account is connected, and then you fill this out. So the spreadsheet is gas prices, and that'll populate with whatever you named your spreadsheet. The worksheet that we're going to be adding a row to is that first sheet, and let's go ahead and refresh these fields because that is a different name. Price per gallon. In the recorded field, we're going to just type in yes, so that when a new data entry goes into the spreadsheet, the recorded column will say yes, it's been recorded, and again you'll see why in just a second. The date is taken from the Slack message, and you'll see the date field, and then price per gallon is taken from our action step, number 2, where we formatted and created that calculation using division. All right, so we'll click continue. This is what it'll look like. Let's go ahead and send that test gave us a green thumbs up, and voila, there it is in our spreadsheet. It's been recorded, yes. There's the date, sort of in a funky format, and we'll get to that later. The price per gallon, and then if we go over to average price per gallon, doesn't look like it's updating. Let's make sure this is punched in correctly. We want the average of all of this row. There we go. Perfect. So now that'll average out all of the price per gallon entry points we put in. Okay, cool. So we are done with that step. And this Zap is ready to go. We named it gas price entry, and we're putting it into a folder that I created called gas prices. We'll make sure it's turned on. Great. So we're going to take a pause and continue this in step 2, where we're going to go through and create the notification for after we input this in. So stick around and we'll see you in a bit.